What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Billy Collins.
Matj.
And this is Magician.
And the Jock.
Guys, today we're going to discuss the black hole that is negativity. I've been dealing with a lot of negative people this week.
All named Nancy.
Or Karens. I find myself just kind of like standing back and just watching and wondering, A, why are they negative? B,
it's just annoying, man.
should I be around it? Yeah. And C, can I actually help these people?
If you're surrounded by negative people, I always say what? In life, you don't get what you want, you get what you are.
Yeah.
Right? So if like everyone else is negative, not me. But if I'm attracting a bunch of negative Nancys or negative Nates, there's some negative dudes out there.
Oh, yeah. A lot of negative dudes.
What does that reflect on me?
I know. I try to stay away from that, or I actually try to be over positive so I can help people or play devil's advocate or whatever you want to say. But there's just some damn Eeyores out there that are just like, oh, Lord, it's 75 degrees and sunny. I'm sure it's raining somewhere.
So if you're watching this and guys, you're surrounded by negative people, you have a negative spouse, everywhere you go, someone's negative. This will be a good show for you.
Exactly.
What are the conversations you've been having?
We'll take, for example, being at the bar or being at the restaurant, and you talk to servers. They always want to say, tell me what bad tips they got. And instead of saying, oh my gosh, I got a really good tip off this, to be positive, they always want to reflect on the negative side of things. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got a $10 tip on a $100 tab or whatever. That just kind of like escalated throughout the week, and I just started drew back and just said, I'm just going to watch people. And it even happened to my kids. My son, my daughter, very negative, very, the world's against me, and I don't have this, I don't have that.
But to be fair, there have been some times where old Billy has come in and said, over the weekend, there was this one nation's hero who left no tip on a thing. I'm like, oh, so you didn't, I could have been like, so you didn't make any money? Well, no, I made,
100%.
I made $14,000, but that one.
But here's the thing is like, I'm learning from that, where I don't know if I should be the one to point out that. And I know you're one of my most positive friends. That's why you're my closest friend, and we pretty much see or talk to each other every day because you're super positive. If I see...
At least in other people's lives.
Right, yeah.
In my own.
If I come in and
Sky is falling.
And say, man, gosh, I was tired this morning. I had to work out too hard. Worked out too hard. I didn't get enough sleep and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, well, think about what you're going to look like tomorrow. How do you shed light onto others?
So, first of all, it's not a blind optimism. It's not as if if Billy was set on fire right now, I wouldn't be like, hey, buddy, I see you're on fire and dying, but just remember, there's cold people in the world. So appreciate that warmth. See you later. I always quote people. I've realized that watching back the videos, and I just have so many things I've read and picked up, and things you never think about until someone asks a question. You're like, oh, that reminds me of this. I remember the interview that Zig Ziglar did, who I love Zig Ziglar. See You at the Top. Go watch Zig Ziglar. He's amazing. He said, being positive doesn't help you do anything. But it helps you do everything better than being negative does. Being positive doesn't help you do anything, but it helps you do everything better than being negative does. I would argue it's probably our natural state to be negative, like a survival tactic. There's a saber-toothed tiger outside the cave. That's what you're going to notice, not the sunset or whatever. What gets annoying is when people live in that. Right? It's the snowball effect.
Yeah.
Misery loves company, and that's true in our own mind, too.
I like what you said before, and you kind of touched on it before we turned on the cameras. We talk and discuss about the show.
We'd have 1 million subscribers on the before the cameras turned on show.
But you said there's negative people, positive people, and a realist. You're more of a realist, right? Is that what you would call yourself?
I think so.
Yeah, where I guess I'm more of a realist too. I think Chase is one of those just positive people. I cut off my arm, but guess what? I lost weight. You know, that type of person. And then you have the negative people, which
I would argue the vast majority.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a reflection on me because people come to me for or talk to me about their problems and stuff because I'm a great listener and they just want to dump it. I'm stuck in that like little, am I supposed to give them advice? My ex would tell me every day about something, everything that went wrong with their day. And I would say, well, what if you did this, this, and this? And she would tell me, I don't want you to fix it. I want you to listen.
Just empathize. Recognizing something's out of whack is a good thing. So if I'm walking, I'm like, damn, my foot hurts. My foot is killing me. And that pain reveals there's a rock in my shoe. Well, that's a good thing. Like, all right, that's like use that as a compass. Something's off, and remove the rock. Negative people are those who are like, God, my foot's killing me. There's this damn rock in my shoe. And they start to identify with that rock. They don't actually want to get rid of it. A lot of the problems in our lives can be solved pretty quickly, but so many of us identified with some condition. It reminds me of the Joker with Heath Ledger, where he said, like, I'm like a dog chasing a fire truck. I don't know what I'd do if I ever catch one. You know what I mean? So that's their identity, is that negativity. And I try to, quote unquote, help people out. But at the end of the day, either people are on your frequency or not. So once you make that shift in your own mind, like, hey, I'm going to stop being negative, everyone else hasn't made that shift automatically. And if anything, it becomes more annoying.
Right.
Now you start to notice it. And it's like a new filter you see the world through. Like if you were overly negative, if my family was overly negative, I just wouldn't be around them. I just wouldn't pay attention to them because our frequencies are off.
And I'm learning that. Took me 50 years, but I'm still learning. I don't need that negativity. I got enough going on where I could easily become that negative person. But I'd rather be...
So easy.
Yeah, I'd rather not be.
Dude, I hate to say it, but you have to stop caring.
Yeah.
If you're a negative person, right, everyone else in your life has just been like, Billy's so damn negative. They stopped answering your phone calls. Stop responding to your texts. And all of a sudden, I'm now showing interest in that manufactured drama in your life. And I'm like, what's wrong, buddy? Like, tell me about your problems. Now I'm feeding into that, right? I'm rewarding bad behavior. So if your spouse is negative, your kids are negative, the problem is that's the type of behavior that we naturally give attention to, especially in relationships. If the relationship's going smooth, you're not really checking in or calling or whatever. It's when your chick says, God, you never pay attention, or you don't want to be at home, or blah, blah, blah. That's what you answer to immediately, and you wonder why that's the behavior that they continue. Like, you can't get mad at a baby for crying if every time it cries, you pick it up, rock it, and give it a bottle.
What you're saying is like you're almost rewarding.
You're rewarding bad behavior.
Yeah. I get the attention. If I have a horrible day, they're going to take care of me.
All publicity is good publicity, right? So if you see a celebrity that's fallen out of the spotlight, well, sure, they want to be on the front of whatever People magazine or something for doing something great. But if they're not on front of any magazine, I think of Britney Spears shaving her head, right? Now suddenly everyone is
the buzz of the
caring what she does. Like, what will she do next? And they wonder why that behavior continues. Well, they're rewarding that bad behavior.
I had a magician friend of mine who every time I'd get a text from him, I would say, hey, how you doing, buddy? I'm fine. I got kidney stones and I don't have a job now, and I can't pay for this. I can't pay for that.
I hate everything.
So I kind of like cut him out. It's not that I don't like the guy. It's just like I don't want to have to deal with it. And sometimes I feel guilty, and then sometimes I feel like I can't fix it.
I think it was Benjamin Franklin said, like, God helps those that want to help themselves, right?
Yeah.
So there's some, you were married for 1,000,000 years. You realize there was a time just let her vent, like she's not looking for a 3-step process of how to fix this. So sometimes being that outlet for people is helpful for them, but I will warn you to do that because I think I was reading about a psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever that was working with patients that were dealing with schizophrenia. And eventually he started to develop those symptoms that those patients had, right? You're the average of your 5 friends. I mean, there's some relationships you can't avoid. The common thing is in the workplace. Someone has a job, they need that job. Someone next to them is just negative all the time, but they need that job. The only reason they have this damn relationship is because they work with them.
Exactly.
But they're so negative. It wears them out. So one or two things could happen. You're either going to quit and find another job, or you just figure out how to deal with it. Just like a cold it can be transferred. Negativity, it's like a virus.
Oh, it's osmosis. They can just...
Yeah, and if you're not... so I think the first thing is to be conscious of it. And also, I have kind of a natural, overarching optimism. I can still remember my mom saying, the Lord's favor is all over you. Mm-hmm. Right? If I could pour into anything with parents, is to instill that in their kids, right? The older I get, the more I realize your job as a parent is not to F your kid up.
100%.
Pass over that negative, woe is me, blah, blah, blah thing, right? Now, I know therapists hate that because that's what they're dealing with.
That's their livelihood.
Unwinding that, yeah. A lot of the people you see in life who are just naturals, who accomplish a ton of stuff and just do it, they have a green thumb. Everything they touch is successful. A lot of it is because that's their expectation.
Yeah, and guys, if you have somebody, take a look at your 5 friends, and if you have somebody that is that negative person, don't name any names, but just leave a comment down below and just say, hey, look, this is how I deal with it. You know, because I would like to know how others would deal with it as well. So
there's a difference between tolerating it, right? And there's a difference between like, hey, you're my buddy, I'm going to help you out. But at some point, if you have no desire to take that damn rock out of your shoe,
then what's the point?
After it's been pointed out, that's all I can do. So what do they say? You lead a horse to water, you can't force it to drink.
Yeah.
If you stop rewarding that bad behavior, it'll usually change because we all want attention. So it's like, I'm going to try something else. You learn this a ton as a parent. I mean, you had 3 kids, right? You realized at first you were like, every time the baby cried, you're just, by the time that 3rd kid's around, you're like, it's fine. Let him cry. It'll be fine. Funny enough, kids get easier as you go along because the parent gets better and they realize like every time the kid bleeds, you don't need to take it to the hospital, right? Poor young jock, Chris. He had to have bone protruding through the skin. The 5th out of 5
That's why
kids.
he's such a badass. He's like, just rub some dirt on it.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, can someone be overly positive, where it gets annoying and you know,
positive people? There's no more annoying people in the world to negative people than positive people.
Like the Tiggers,
like,
always bouncing.
And a lot of what we talk about is like raising your level of consciousness, right? It's first becoming aware. You know, most people drowning in negativity, the problem is they don't know they're drowning. Mm-hmm. It's their natural state, right? It's not a case of wrong think, it's a case of repeated think, over and over and over again. And all a belief is a thought you have over and over and over again.
Right.
We see this all the time with people of color, right? I remember being in a locker room, I had a bunch of black friends, and they've shared with me from day one they were told police are the enemy, that whites are the enemy. And playing fortunately they played a sport where there was not a lot of whites, but there were some whites on the football team, and they're like, you know, the best way to cure a racist is to get him with someone of the other race. Wait a second, I just had an overarching thought that all white people were evil or all black people were evil, and you're not evil, so if you're not evil, by extension, there should be others that aren't evil, and it kind of that crumbles that whole thing. With negative people, a lot of that stuff's learned. You had 3 kids, you raised them up. Like, I think a lot of parents, in their effort to protect their kids, they end up handicapping them.
Yeah.
Right? Which some of that you have to do. My son's 4. Jackson, you can't fly. Like, don't jump off the roof. Like, but
there's certain things that you can.
It's like, how do we keep that childlike faith that the Bible talks about of being able to achieve? How do we keep that while also keeping them from jumping off the roof?
That's a great question, because in my household, I would like to say I was the more positive person. My ex was more like, it was always doom and gloom. This problem comes up, this problem comes up. And you can ask all 3 of my kids. I tell them this all the time. I don't care what the problem is. It can be solved. We just may not like what we have to do to solve it. You know, it's like, oh, I wrecked my car. Okay, well, now you're going to have to get a second job to pay for it. Or my grades, I got a D in math. Okay, well, now you're going to have to study a little harder in that to raise that up. You can always...
Everything's figure outable.
Right. So, you play that part.
Was that how did your parents instill that in you?
I think so. My dad's very happy-go-lucky. We had this discussion about him playing the stock market, and he was really good at it. And the reason is because he grew up in a one-bedroom trailer. And
he's playing with house money, baby.
And he talked to his advisor and during '08, when everything was crashing and the world was burning and doom and gloom was everywhere. My dad was like, well, buy that and buy that. I want to buy that too. So he's always had that positive outlook on things, like, okay, well, whatever. I can fix it. It's not a big deal. You're not dead. My brother told me when I was going through a divorce and lost a business, didn't have a place to stay, had, going through a divorce.
Had a cat with thumbs.
Negativity came and reared its ugly head. And I remember sitting with my brother on his porch, and he looked at me and goes, well, at least you're not dead. And from that point on, I was like, well, shit, he's right. And I think that was instilled from him, from my dad. My mom, she's more level-headed than my dad in certain ways. Like, he can just be like, well, we're gonna go surfing, and I'm gonna push you into
You can fly off that.
Yeah, and she's like, no. Let's put a mattress down at first if you're gonna jump off the roof. So it was kind of like an equal.
They complemented each other.
Right. Nothing is that doom and gloom that can't be fixed. Sometimes I need something to remind me of that.
So well, Les Brown say, like, if you can look up, you can stand up.
Right.
Yeah. You get what you expect.
Yeah. And I think that when you say that as taught from parents, I can see that, because
it's a vicious cycle.
I had negative friends, and I go to their house, and I couldn't wait to leave because I felt like I was going to cut my wrist because the people were so negative. And, well, this guy's out to get me, and at work they
screwed me. The game's rigged.
Yeah, I was like, come on. It's not. Do you think that you're that special that they're going to single you out? Like the world is just going to single you out and make you have a bad day?
I was having a conversation with a woman. She's now working in the film industry, Susan Simba. I talk to her all the time. She was a very successful trial attorney, right? So came up the ranks, in a firm, and then started her own firm, and retired in like 40 or something crazy, And we were talking. I was asking her about, like, it seems like there's male dominated. We hear that all the time. And she goes, you know what? I was fortunate enough. Fortunately, I wasn't educated that women couldn't be trial attorneys. I just didn't know that was a rule.
Right.
So since I didn't know that, she was a very successful trial attorney. And that's a lot of what I try to instill in Jackson. Like, I'll never punish him for being a boy. Right? I'll never punish him for wanting to, I don't want to put my limitations on him.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes, 100%, because my ex would tell my kids all the time, like, if they had a bad day, or someone did this to me and made me have a bad day, and she would say, only you can make you have a bad day. No one else. You're in charge of every decision that you make. You're in charge of every feeling that you have. Not one person can come in and make you have a bad day. You made you have a bad day. And I was like, that's pretty good shit. I was like,
why do I want to rip your clothes off right now?
What's going on in life?
I thought I had lost that loving feel. Yeah, no, for sure. And it's like, I don't want to turn every conversation I have into someone as an excavation project to see, like, were you not hugged enough in first grade or whatever. But a lot of that's...
Did you not get that many golden stars?
A lot of it's the reality, man. Like, when you're born, it's like shooting an arrow, right? If you're a little bit off, those two arrows are pretty close early on, but as you go, they go their own path. They vary even more. You have one person who was never educated enough to tell him that he couldn't succeed. Like, why give your kids extra hurdles to have to jump over? It's tough enough just making it with the idea that all things are equal. it's almost impossible to say, look, the game's rigged against you. Like, we're a Dodge. Dodges, they just don't succeed. Why would you ever curse that? You know? So I try to have empathy for people while at the same time, I don't want to catch what they have, right? If you're going to catch anything, this is why being the average of your 5 friends, success is contagious, just like losing is contagious, just like negativity is contagious, right? So if the 5 friends around you are negative, I got news for you. You are too.
Yeah.
Right? If your 5 friends are broke, you're the 6th. Just is what it is, right? We are herd animals, right? So back to dealing with negativity, dealing with negative people, you know, there's a reason why your inner circle is really small, right? So we have this little hole here, which I was fondling earlier. Sorry about that. So think of this as like a camp.
It's a habit.
This is like a, can't help but black holes. This is a campfire, right? It's a vision. My parents own a bunch of property out. You've been in the woods. You have a campfire. Your inner circle is closest to that campfire, right? There's benefits to being closest to that, right? It's warmer and it's the most well lit, right? So keep your inner circle should be small, and there's benefits to being in your inner circle, right? So choose those wisely. And as it goes out wider, the further away you get from a campfire, the cooler it gets and the darker it gets, right? So people have to earn their place next to the campfire.
Right. That's a good analogy. It's really good.
I forget who I think I took that from Rich Cooper, who was talking with the guy. But anyways, I love that analogy.
That's a great way to look at things. So let me ask this question. Great leaders, are they more negative, are they more positive, or are they more realist? Do you have to be positive to be a great leader?
I think so. I mean, you can look in a group of negative people, there's a ringleader, right? So you basically inspire whatever your expectation is. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So if you think the sky is falling, if I'm the one yelling the loudest it's falling, and here's all the reasons why, you're going to follow me because I am reinforcing your belief, right? So being positive, I'm a realist, but my reality is positive. Does that make sense?
No. Yeah. I mean,
Like, I'm going places. I've just had this intrinsic ambition. So that's my reality. It just happens to be positive. Right?
Yeah.
And it's very unattractive to those that aren't going places, right? The problem with the race, here's the problem with being negative, it's a race to the bottom. You know the problem with the race to the bottom? You might just win.
and I can see that the backing of being a realist, you can either be a positive or a negative, because you have those realists who are like, yeah, it was a great day, but you know, this could have happened and made it even better. Where a positive person is like, yeah, it was a great day. You know, I don't know how it could have gotten any better. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's however you want to take it. You want to be a negative back realist or a positive backing realist. I choose to be on the positive side. Some could be say that it's antagonistic. I don't know. Don't really care. But you know, I get sometimes, you know, like I said when I came in, I was like, man, I'm just negative people have been bombarding me. It can kind of like get on your nerves.
It can, but what I told you said, I was like, look, but life is a reflection. So there's one thing.
He loves when
he does body functions. But life can be a reflection, right? So if you're really negative and I feel that negativity, like I can't share in an experience with you that I'm not experiencing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense because I can't relate.
Yeah. It's a shared experience, right? So if everyone around you is negative and is making you're negative, right? So My advice would be I encourage, if you don't know what to do in life, which we're all trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up, right? Just establish a mindset that everything's going to work out, right? A mindset that life is happening for me, not to me. Mm-hmm. It's a subtle change, but God, it changes everything.
And gosh darn it, people, just looking for the rainbow in the rain.
You can, but like you go
over the top.
Like and we talked about this before. Like if I'm on a road trip somewhere and I don't know really where to go and I don't have a map or a GPS, suddenly the road gets a lot bumpier. Mm-hmm. Suddenly traffic gets a lot more annoying because you're like, well, damn, I don't even want to be on this road anyway.
Your senses are heightened at that point.
Yeah, because you don't even know if you're going in the right direction anyways. Right? We all have this ideal self that hopefully we're moving towards, and we feel in a funk when we're going that way. And it's like I'm putting up with all this crap, and I'm not even getting anywhere closer to that
goal that I have
self
in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, but once you have a GPS and you've plugged in your destination first, success, of being in shape, of if you're single and want to be married and be in a relationship with kids, that becomes your reality. Now all of a sudden, you hit a detour, you're like, who cares? Like, I can't control that, but at least I'm heading in the right direction.
So do you think that more negative people don't, like, we have goals, for life, the channel, work, whatever. I mean, we have specific goals. I know I write them down. I love my note app on my phone. Do you think negative people have a problem with writing their goals and not? Because I think once you write your goals out, you can do one or two things. You can look at it and say that I can't obtain those goals, or part two, you can find steps to reach those goals.
It's whether or not number one, if you read a self-help book, every self-help book talks about writing goals down. And I've noticed, because I've had a lot of these conversations with people, when they write down their goals, they write down goals they think the author of that book would be proud of.
Yeah.
But it's not goals they really give a shit about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. They're not looking at the big picture with the author.
They're like, if this goal list ever makes it public, I want people to think I'm a real responsible guy, and these are goals in line with what everyone else, right? So what I like to think, we talk about, there's a difference between thinking of the end and thinking from the end. So I'll say it again. There's a difference between thinking of the end, what I want to accomplish, right? I'm playing a movie in my head and I can see it, and I can see me in that movie, but I'm not really experiencing it. It's just out of reach. Mm-hmm. Versus thinking from the end. Classic example in sports, right? Kids talk about, man, I was 8 years old. I remember watching the Super Bowl and the guy lifting the Lombardi trophy, and I felt myself carrying that trophy. And I knew I would do I couldn't not carry that trophy if I wanted to, right? Because they experienced that. When I was 9 or 10 years old, I saw myself playing catch with my son in my backyard. Isn't that crazy? I was living at my parents' house. I didn't have a yard, but I just saw it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, I saw it like I was a bystander. I experienced it. I'm like, psh, psh. And it was set. It was set in stone. That's when the seed was planted, and all roads led to that.
I'm a big believer in reverse engineering stuff. That might come from being a magician. Like, I have this ultimate goal.
You start with the crowd going,
I see them, I'm like...
You see them, and it's like, all right, that is guaranteed.
Yeah, this is how... Now it becomes How do I get there? How do I build that? And it's the most... I think, for me, I love magic. It's my passion. But it's that, to me, is the fun part. Like, when I sit there and talk with Brian or whatever, and it was like, well, I want this. This is the end goal. This is what I see, what I envision. Now, how do we build that? And I think that is a proper way to look at positivity when you're a negative person. Like, I want the house with the white picket fence and the 2 cars with a 2-car garage. Okay, if you see yourself, what path can you take? Kind of, and that's why I said, is it okay to write out goals or little like what destination pins like on your phone? Like, okay, I need to go here, here, and here. Well, now you're taking your mind off all the negative stuff, all the little roadblocks. I heard this a while ago. When you concentrate on the little roadblocks, you don't see the finish line. So how do you get past those roadblocks in a positive way? And for me, I think it's to write those goals or to envision those goals. You know, I have an envision that's taped on my mirror. I did it my last birthday. And it was a certain goal when I hit 52. And I'm going to, every morning I look, I can see it on my mirror. Hasn't moved. And I've had girls come in and they make fun of it, but
I had to get that in. Yeah, but no, it's true, man. Like, who you go to sleep with every night dictates who you wake up with. Right? So you have the ability to pick your thermostat. So if your house is hot as hell, you go set your, if it's at 82 and you set your thermostat at 68, you set it. That's where I want it to be, or 69 or 70 or whatever you want it to be. Well, it's still hot for a little while, but it's slowly coming back, right?
Yeah.
So your self-image, your whatever you, because look, it takes a lot of imagination to think of the past, right? We use imagination for that all the time. I wrote about that. I had a memory that was so entrenched in my mind that I thought was, if you'd have put me on a lie detector, I would have passed it. Then I remember my brother converted all our home videos, my older brother converted home videos to digital so we could watch it. And that came up. I'm like, oh, shit, I remember this. And then I'm like, wait a second, that's not how it happened. And my brain like melted because I'm like, well, I'm watching it. So clearly that's how it happened.
That's how it happened, but that's not how I
envisioned it wrong.
Yeah.
This is why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable in court cases. Because 5 people can see the 5 things and they're all looking at it through 5 different lenses, right? So you use a lot of imagination for the past, but you use a lot of imagination for the future too, right? So imagination is, I live in my imagination. Mm-hmm. Like, I walk around and I ignore quote unquote reality that doesn't conform to my imagination, to the vision that I've seen. The Bible talks about where there's no vision, that people will perish, right? So, and we all do this. If it sounds woo-woo, guys, if you can't see past your current circumstance, how the hell are you ever going to, there would never be any innovation.
Yeah, and then when you talk about imagination, I do that too, and it helps me with like burnout, because of like the channel. I mean, we get to a stale point and we have to kind of like reinvent and do stuff, and like we were talking about revamping things, and it's a constant move, but sometimes I have to remind myself what my goals are and where I need to be, and imagine myself being there. Like, you know, I want YouTube to be my full-time job. I don't want to do anything else except YouTube. And that's because we both have creative bugs and stuff like that. But I forget that that imagination part sometimes when we deal with everything and coming up with ideas and cameras and lighting and all that stuff. I tend to almost forget that. And then it takes me a little shock or a jolt to look back and say, okay, all right, let's get back on track.
You got to, well, that's, you're thinking from the end.
Yeah.
Right? So I plant seeds in my backyard. There's no bigger sign of a lack of faith than to dig those seeds up to see if they're growing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
Most great things happen when you don't expect it. Right? You plant them, you water them, and then it's like, I don't know how seeds grow. I don't care, but I just know they grow if I water them.
Yeah.
Right? So if you get too marred down in the house, how things are going to work out, that's what a lot of negativity happens, right? If you're not so sold on where you're headed, then the roads, like I said, if you don't know your destination, you don't know where you're going, like the road's a little bit bumpier, the traffic's a little bit more annoying, you know. But if I'm going to Disney World, I'm driving there, my mind is in Disney World. I'm experiencing it. I'm willing to put up with a lot of shit. I don't even feel it.
And I think that is a great way to battle negativity, is to have that, like you said, the end goal in mind and focus on that and what glory that could be. And hell, half the journey getting there is all the stories come from the journey. Most times, 9 times out of 10, it's not actually what you did while we were there. It's like the road trip to get to Disney World.
For sure.
Like, oh, remember we stopped here and
That's an important
the
distinction.
dog ran out in the traffic and got hit.
Well, so that's an important distinction, because there's that quote, success is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
Right? So usually a lot of times people who say that never experience any success. Right? It's kind of a mechanism, right? I think success is a journey and a destination. Right? So if you do your life right, yes, I want to go to Disney World, but I'm going to travel there first class. Right? It's not an ends justify the means.
Right.
It's I'm giving equal weight to both. Right? I'm enjoying the drive there, first class or whatever, and also that. Right? So prioritize both of those. So I don't know if we talked anything about negativity.
I don't know, but
I can't even focus on it.
guys, if for real, I hope this helps some of those people out there. If you're watching this and you're
I'm positive it will.
You're in a place where you're feeling like you're just every day is a negative. Think about what we said. Do some of the practices. Watch this video a couple times. If you need help, leave a comment down below.
I'm going to give you a good book to read. Go read Feeling is the Secret by Neville Goddard. Just go read it. Change your life.
And you can download
It's
that
on
on
YouTube.
Audible.
YouTube, yeah.
We're not sponsored by them, but maybe one day.
Get a free first month.
Please. So guys, speaking of growing, do us a big favor, subscribe to the channel.
Smash the like button.
And we'll see you on the next video.
Peace. Puberty.